Alright, after this past weekend's movie, it's only appropriate I thought we'd do this. I figure we might as well.
Sure.
So why not revisit these? So, for a while back in the day, I wasn't all that big on them. And I didn't mention this when I reviewed the new movie because, like, I only thought to mention it when I was halfway through it, and then I got too scared to say it. Yeah, practically no experience with the video games on my part. You said you played one of them.
Mm-hmm.
But back in the day, these were popular in our circle because you were such a massive Angelina fan.
Mm-hmm.
And this was kind of, once again, I'd mentioned with Alicia Vikander, it's the same thing. She had only won her Best Supporting Actress Oscar like 2 years before the first Tomb Raider.
Mm-hmm.
So it kind of seemed like she was taking a different direction in this kind of action role that she fills out really well. Even in regards to like the movies not being held in that high regard, and people who don't particularly care for them, especially as video game adaptations, they say the best thing always was her portrayal of it. So I figure usually we just go one movie at a time. So I guess we'll just start with the first one. So you said after a recent revisiting that you don't think it really holds up that well. What do you have any particular issues or?
I don't know, like, the first robot scene in the movie's kind of cool, and then, like, shortly after that, I just kind of lost interest.
Is it always after, a woman should be modest?
Yeah.
And then it's like, I don't care anymore. It's like, I don't know how many times I was flipping through channels and I saw that scene, and then I'd watch it all the way through up to that point, and then the second it cuts to, like, the other place, and we see, like, the villain, it's like, oh, well, but but I do like the way that scene progresses to where it's like it's this kind of comedic moment when they're saying how they're going after the pieces of the triangle and all that or whatever the stupid plot is. In this movie it doesn't matter, that's the glorious thing. And there's kind of that comedic moment amongst villains where he's built up as to be like this big villain, but then as he and his little sidekick are leaving, it's like he's like, yes, we are ready. And he's like, really, Master? Are we ready? No, we're not ready at all. And it just cuts off there. So, but then obviously once it goes on from there, it is one of those movies that I feel like isn't as bad in regards to getting this was a bad era in regards to getting movies getting caught up in their own badassery or trying to be badass. But I don't know that it doesn't. I don't know that it fails at that. It's more, and I think maybe as time goes on, it's getting a bit more. Its attempts at badassery are almost lovable, even if they don't always come through, because it's kind of the look back where it's actually, instead of time making it necessarily worse, it just kind of makes its faults a bit more charming, I suppose.
It's like it's a product of its time.
Yeah, and there's actually, and obviously going on her portrayal.
The soundtrack's a big part of that too.
Yeah. You mean the music specifically? I think because one thing I actually think really works in this movie is Graham Revell's score. Like the few like badass moments that require something like that and not like a soundtrack song, I do think work really well. Like moments when they're like walking in slow mo and shit, 2001 action movie type stuff. But I don't know if you ever thought about this, but one thing I noticed that I really like about Angelina's portrayal here is how the movies just really go for the dumb because they really have no choice. But how really straight-faced she plays it. Like, it doesn't really, like, I just won an Oscar, now I'm just fucking around for money. She, like, totally plays it straight the whole time. Through both movies, pretty much. And I always kind of admire that a little bit. But also something that kind of struck with me, that's something that's missing from the Cradle of Life, is the Voight connection. Where obviously she's got the missing father and there's kind of a rift between them and there's something missing between them. And the fact that it's played by her dad in real life, who she has like a rift with, or at least did at the time, almost gives it like this bizarrely poignant thing that real life kind of came through a Tomb Raider movie of all things. So there's that. What do you think about the action overall?
The action's pretty good when it's there.
There's the whole kind of rappelling down from the ceiling thing. I do like that it takes the guys rappelling from the ceiling thing, but it kind of turns it on its head a little bit because they're like, usually the idea is they'll rappel from the ceiling and then there'll be some kind of hand-to-hand fight or whatever, but she doesn't let them reach the ground. Because she's already up there, and then it goes into the whole kind of bike thing, and it is... I do think technically the action scenes could work better, like the scene where she's on the bike and fucking people up, I think could be like in wider shots to give us a better look at what exactly is going on.
Yeah.
But here it just feels a little bit too close and a little bit too heavily edited, but yeah, there have certainly been worse action scenes these days.
And as ridiculous as it is, like, the fight scenes with the big stone statues aren't bad.
Yeah.
Especially the one that has, like, the multiple faces.
Yeah, because I was thinking, when you look at, like, the climax, what really impresses me about this is, like, how much of it looks practical. Especially with how fantastical it gets. You expect just a shitload of CGI. But a lot of it looks like, you know, actual sets and everything, which I think is really impressive.
It's a pretty neat looking movie for the most part.
Yeah. How do you feel about Daniel Craig? I think I've said enough about Daniel Craig. I keep forgetting they haven't seen the Bond video yet, so they...
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, next week. But Daniel Craig in this, pretty wooden, pretty straight face.
Pretty Daniel Craig.
But you know what I like about it? I don't know if you noticed this. The fact that he's flirtatious, but they don't really make a love story about it.
No. You just know there's kind of a history there.
And then they just kind of leave it at that. One of my favorite lines is when he's like, they're walking through the jungle and shit, and they're like, oh, but Laura's this. And he's just like, Laura's overrated. Look who's talking, Daniel Craig. So.
Oh. Shots fired.
What do you think the fantasy element goes with the action well? Because I tend to forget that they're like... I know that's like the whole thing after a while, especially like in the Cradle of Life, but it's like, for some reason, despite the directions it goes, I tend to forget there's fantasy elements until they happen.
Yeah.
Like, it feels relatively grounded. That's the way the new one is, too. Like, suddenly Walton Goggins brings out zombies and shit. And it's not as exciting as it sounds, unfortunately.
I was going to say, Walton Goggins and zombies sounds fun.
You would think, yeah. But, so, yeah, that's what, of course, the cats are going crazy now. They were perfectly quiet through the Bond video for 2.5 hours, but, so, yeah, there's hardly too much to say about the first one, really.
Yeah.
It's kind of basically, like, very straightforward action, but somehow there is something that feels kind of unique to it. It's certainly missing from the new movie. But I do understand the new movie kind of wanting to take its own direction and all that, but yeah. As an Angelina fan, does it still hold up, or as a former Angelina fan? Or was that like your main driving force to liking him as much as you did back then?
Probably so.
Because you've noticed he's been a bit quiet. What he was telling me before we started was that he's going to have a lot more to say about Cradle of Life than he would this one, because the Cradle of Life was the one I always remember you kind of gravitated a bit more towards.
For me, it was easier to get into that one.
Do you want to start with that one, or?
I can. I'm not saying that it's great by any means.
I don't think anybody is.
No.
So you're good to go.
but I don't know, for some reason compared to the first one, this one just holds my attention more. I don't know if it's because, like, I don't know.
It's more fantastical. Like it's the global scale is larger.
Yeah. Plus, I think the villain is more interesting. I think Kieran Hines is more interesting. I like Kieran Hines anyway.
Yeah. This was kind of like one of the first times we saw him, wasn't it?
It was one of our introductions to him.
Because it was right before, it was 2 years before Munich. So.
Yeah. But I like him in this movie, and like it's funny, like Jaimin Hansu's hiding out in this movie, like.
Yeah, he shows up in like the last half hour.
Yeah, and he doesn't really do a whole lot.
I love that his intro is her just saying, "Hey, you know, you around? Are you driving your Jeep? Because I'm dropping out of the sky into your Jeep right now."
Yeah, you got that. You got Gerard Butler.
This would have been... I can never remember when Phantom was. It was about the same year, wasn't it?
Phantom was 2003, I think. This was 2000... Or Phantom was 2004, I think this was 2003.
Yeah.
I think the ending, like, I know I'm kind of jumping around, but I think the ending where, like, they're having the standoff and one of them gets shot is very cliche. But judging by watching the beginning of the movie, I honestly wouldn't have guessed that he would end up dead.
It's a very dramatic standoff, despite being a bit of a cliche.
Mm-hmm.
Like right before this, probably the last time we saw it was Minority Report.
It feels like that there's actual emotion being conveyed in that standoff, which is weird for a movie like this that everything just feels so phoned in. That feels like a legitimate, like, I don't know. It just feels like a legitimate moment between the two characters.
And you would think, because it doesn't, for a while, it doesn't seem like that much is put into his character. Like, it's the old cliche of you go to get the prisoner, you're gonna free to do your dirty work, and he's like hanging on the ceiling. They're always fucking hanging on the ceiling when they're about to be freed for some reason.
Mm-hmm.
I think like Richard Gere in The Jackal, Kevin Costner in that one movie. Mm-hmm. It's always. But yeah, it's weird how much emotion is in that standoff when it seems almost last minute that Terry even comes back.
Yeah.
It's like he just disappears after a while, and then he just happens to come back for the end.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to Kieran Hines also, what do you think about the fact that his motive is basically, I just like to do this. I just like to fuck people up, and there's nothing else to it.
I think it adds another dimension to his character that, like, and there's not, in these movies, there's not really a lot of room to add dimensions to your characters. But I like that they established that he doesn't have a political preference or anything like that. He just likes making weapons out of chemicals.
He's also one of those villains that's very hands-on. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those ones where you think you see him in the suit and he's on the plane and all that, and you think he's just one of those guys that lets everything else happen, like Till Schweiger do his dirty work and all that.
Here you go, Stiglitz. There's a lot of people hiding out in the cradle of life.
Yeah. But then it's like, you think he'd be one of those guys, but then, like, when they're in the fucking caves and shit at the end, he's right down in that. Mm-hmm. That's what gets him killed.
Yeah. He ends up falling in the black acid pool or whatever.
Do you think the action's a lot better in this one? I think it's a bit more derivative. But it's bigger. Kind of like the scene when they're in, Shanghai or something. Everybody's in Shanghai. I can't remember exactly where, but...
The helicopter scene?
Yeah, where it's like they're jumping around on buildings. It just kind of feels like we've seen that before. There is the lab shootout with Till Schweiger. Mm-hmm. I'm just waiting for Hans Gruber to appear and say, "Shoot the glass." Mm. It looks like the same setting almost. Mm-hmm. And then there's the shot that always kind of makes me laugh because like I feel like it should be this big thing and it should look like this massive shot where they jump off the building and they like glide. Mm-hmm. But it's like just this one shot of them gliding that just lasts for fucking ever.
Yeah, and you can tell it's like over a blue screen. Yeah.
It's like they're barely moving.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, when's it going to cut to something else? Okay, it's got to cut to something else soon. It just has to.
I think this movie might have been our introduction to Gerard Butler, too.
Yeah, I was trying to think back. I can't remember if I might have seen Dracula 2000 before this, but I wouldn't have been able to pinpoint it was him. So much less hair in this one.
Maybe that's why I gravitated more toward this one too, because this one has more known names in it.
Yeah, and another thing I do like is the movies do have a sense of humor, despite the fact that I praise Jolie for playing it so straight. Mm-hmm. But like the Like in the first movie, there was the I like the auction mistake when she's at the auction and she's just leaning back and being an asshole on purpose and loving it, and she sees somebody and she waves and somebody thinks that she bid on it and it's almost to her and then somebody finally bids and she like has that sigh of relief that she didn't have to confront that situation. But there's something else there's a couple of humorous things in this one. One of my personal favorites is when she's setting up the surveillance in that house, and they're watching the jellyfishing episode of SpongeBob. And you just hear like Squidward getting soup blown all over him while she's setting up cameras and shit. And you hear like the music playing. And then there's the one where Kieran Hines and his dudes are like in the elevator, and he's like, "Yeah, we're gonna get her, we're gonna kick her ass." And there's that douchebag hit in there that hits all the buttons.
Yeah. How much darker could the movie have gone if when the kid just looked up and smiled, Kieran Hines just went and like killed him?
I wouldn't have put it past that character. That's the great thing.
Or he would have like injected him with like a poison or something.
And I also, I do think Noah Taylor and the Butler are a little underutilized in this one. Hillary, the Butler's name, because I do like the moment in the first movie when like shit's gonna go down. It always makes me laugh too. Like and I like the fact that I think it's not supposed to be bad. It's supposed to be funny. When like all the shooting's going down, everything's getting all messed up, and then he just kind of gets out of bed. And it's like, oh, and he like puts his shoes on, and then in the next shot he's still like that, but he's wearing a bulletproof vest and has a shotgun. I love that. They don't get to do near as much in Cradle of Life. There is that moment towards the beginning when she like grabs a shark and shit. And don't they say she's like stranded and disoriented for like 3 days?
Yeah.
Which is really funny because that's like a portion of Unbroken that she directed. Where that really happened to those dudes. It was like, I wonder if when she made Unbroken, she was thinking, oh, I remember when Tomb Raider 2 when I did the same thing. She's making this big prestige movie.
I think the dialogue in the second one's a lot more corny.
Oh, yeah.
Well, the dialogue all around's pretty corny.
And, yeah. And we do have to go obvious directions. Like, obviously, we can't avoid the love story the way we did with Daniel Craig. There's got to be some kind of tension there. Though I do like, she mainly uses that just to fucking handcuff him. So there's that. And there is something a lot more, because, you know, Daniel Craig might as well be a fucking plank. There is a lot more chemistry between her and Gerard Butler, for sure, because they both have that, you know, charisma. Gerard Butler's charismatic as fuck in this. And it's great.
Yeah.
But yeah, as far as action
goes... And at least
goes,
with those two and that one, at least there's, like, that history.
Yeah. But as far as the action goes, it's like, you do expect more from Jan de Bont, the director of Speed. Yes, I know he made The Haunting remake, I know he made Speed 2 as well.
Twister.
Yeah, he did Twister and he did fucking Speed. It's like, you'd expect just a little more like a Tomb Raider, like Simon West, who had just done like Con Air before that, which you talked about the last time I was here. And you would think that, you know, a director like Jan de Bont would really, really pump it up, but it's just kind of another one of these, but... I think I still prefer this one, but I totally get why one would prefer the Cradle of Life and how it seems to get much bigger and all that. Like I said, on the global scale in general, it gets a lot bigger. Yeah. So isn't she known for like the word globetrotter is used to describe her? You much more get that vibe in Cradle of Life for sure. It is kind of missing that connection I talked about I like so much in the first movie, where the connection with her dad does give it an emotional point, especially since he's played by Jon Voight. None of that in the Cradle of Life. So that's kind of something that's missing. So...
No, it's like Tomb Raider tried to like establish the character and establish her motives and a little bit of history, and the Cradle of Life is just like a pure sequel. Like, there's no more development. It's just, these are the characters you have. This is the mission they're going on. And by the way, Gerard Butler did something shitty in the past.
I wonder if they're trying to pull that shit with the new movie. Not to keep hating on the first movie, but, I mean, you know, it's still fresh in my mind, obviously. So, like, maybe they're trying to build up something and they're going to have some big badass sequel, but I don't know. I think Vikander can pull it off if she really wanted to. It's just a matter of if the writers are going to back her up. Yeah. So, I mean, when you waste Walton Goggins as a villain, that's just, yeah. When Kieran Hines bests you when you're Walton Goggins in 2018, and you can't beat Kieran Hines 2003. I'm not to say anything bad about Kieran Hines at all, but it's like, yeah. So yeah, we differ, but pretty much we're falling in the exact same place anyway. So, yeah, that's just what these are. This was just kind of a fun one to do that wouldn't take a whole lot of effort. So, and to coincide with the new movie to kind of see how things mesh and how they change and all that. Do you think you'll ever see the new movie? Even if it's like just hanging out on Netflix or something?
Maybe eventually. Yeah. Which one do you prefer? Do you prefer these or do you prefer the new one?
All these.
Really?
Yeah, because remember what I was saying before, which I haven't said because it's in the Bob video yet. It's much better to be bad than it is to be boring. And the new one's just boring more than anything else. These always have something going on. Yeah. So that's, yeah. In movies like this, as long as you always have something going on, you're at least doing it a little right. You're putting effort into it. So, and there's something in there. So, yes. And like I said, just having Jolie giving it her badass best always helps as well.
Which one do you think's better to look at?
in regards to Jolie or Vikander?
Yeah.
Jesus. Well, obviously, and I don't know how to answer this question without seeming superficial, but it's like, Vikander obviously is something to behold. Like, everybody is jealous of Michael Fassbender. I mean, how couldn't you be?
Mm-hmm.
But, I mean, Jolie in her prime, which I would say is probably... I mean, she still looks really good. People say, you know, the skinny thing and all that. She still looks really good today. But, I mean, her circa Tomb Raider is, like... I know they're giving Vikander shit because she doesn't match her anatomically or whatever. But,
Yeah, but the game started with triangle boobs.
But I'm assuming you're saying it doesn't matter.
No.
Okay. Yeah, hopefully that's the point we're reaching. So, yes. That is not the reason I would say Jolie as far as looks. I just think Jolie, especially just on the cover of this DVD is just, yes. I'm now uncomfortable that I'm saying this in public. So, I guess this is where we end this.
You're welcome.
Yeah. So as you know, as we've referenced a few times, next week you're getting the big Bond video that's about 2 hours and 25 minutes that I will timestamp the shit out of in case you want to jump around. Where we do top 5 lists and all that other stuff, rank the Bond actors, pick our favorite Bond movies, all that fun stuff. So, and...
Should we tell them what lists we did?
Yeah, we did. There's the top 5 movies.
We ranked the actors, we did the movies, we did the songs, we did the cold openings, villains, henchmen, and the girls.
Yes. And we just talked about our just overall.
And its impact on like the movie industry and stuff like that.
We touched on every movie at least once or at least in passing.
Yeah, we tried to make it as much of a perspective where we hit on all of them at some point as much as we could. Especially seeing as how there's some that are much weaker than some of the other ones.
Yeah. or much higher above.
Mm-hmm.
So all that, and then we've got Hello, and then we got Blofeld's Cat just came in here. So all that, Pacific Rim. I couldn't remember what the movie was next week. Last time I did this, it's Pacific Rim, followed by A Quiet Place the following week, and then all that. So to look forward to. So we're getting even bigger in action. I don't know about the quality, but we'll see what happens. John Boyega's really passionate about plugging it, so we'll see what he brings.
Yeah, you're heading into the summer season where it's all about making bigger movies, not necessarily better movies.
Yeah. So we'll see what happens. Anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, I think we're done.